الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يسعد أوله ولا ينفذ آخره. اللهم لك الحمد حمدا سرمدا دائما أبدا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيعنا خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we are getting closer and closer to the end of this blessed month, we need to intensify our effort to getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the concept of tazkiyah and purification of the soul. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help and assist us in this endeavor. At least by the end of the month we can achieve something, inshallah. عن أبي عبد الله عليه الصلاة والسلام إنه قال: من أصبح وأمسى والدنيا أكبر همه جعل الله الفقر بين عينيه وشتت أمره ولم ينل من الدنيا إلا ما قسم الله له. ومن أصبح والآخرة أكبر همه جعل الله الغنى في قلبه وجمع له أمره. A hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salam alayhi that states those who live for the sake of dunya and material life, that is their only concern. God ordains poverty between their eyes and their affairs to be shattered and disorganized. They will not get anything beyond what God has destined for them. Those who care about akhirah, God grants them contentment to their heart and gives them satisfied life. A concept which is very critical and huge number of literature in our sources exist, both verses in the Holy Quran as well as ahadith from the Holy Prophet. The concept of hubbud dunya, the love of this material life. During the past few weeks, and particularly few nights, critical characters needed for strengthening of our spirit or spiritual movement we discussed. Last night we talked about the concept of khawf and raja, and previous night we talked about other issues that are critical in this endeavor. And we have pointed out repeatedly that purification of the soul is not going to be easy. It's a challenge, uphill battle that we need to constantly struggle. Having a balanced condition between khawf and raja that last night we discussed, we shouldn't have fear to the point that fear becomes debilitating, leading to some kind of depression and loss of hope. On the other hand, we shouldn't have over-reliance on mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah's forgiveness to the point that we become sinful and forgetful of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has punishment as well, as the verse in the Holy Quran states, مَا يُقَالُ لَكَ إِلَّا مَا قَدْ قِيلَ لِلرُّسُلِ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَذُو مَغْفِرَةٍ وَذُو عَقَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. So they both go hand in hand. So the concept of creating balance between fear and hope, khawf and raja, where none of them go to the excessive and extreme side, that they become debilitated. Fear becomes depression, and from depression one becomes forgetful of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive, and we throw in the towel and we say, well, I have sinned so much, there is nothing I can do, God is not going to accept, and that's it, I give up. That is not acceptable in Islam, because Last night I pointed out there are a number of verses in the Holy Quran and Ahadith that clearly state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive if we take the initiative. And Tawbah and repentance is the first step. Also, to the other side, we're becoming too comfortable with the concept of mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're committing sins without regret and constantly reminding, as somebody says, Inna Allah ghafurun rahim. We forget the other part, though aqab and alim goes with it. These are part of the character. So your Lord is the Lord of forgiveness and the Lord of the painful punishment. So fear and hope, they should balance themselves up, that they would not disturb and cause a huge amount of crisis in our life. That was the gist of what we talked about last night. Tonight, I want to focus on this concept of what we call hubb dunya, that mystical characters and the masters, they talk about, our imams have talked about it, and others, they have talked about it. This hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salam alayhi, Man asbaha wa amsa, whoever wakes up and goes back to sleep, and the only concern that they have is the material life. Constantly thinking about material life, nothing else. If they do such a thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ja'ala al-faqr fi aynayhi, poverty between his eyes, is a metaphoric use of language that says they will remain poor. Wa shattata amrah, and their life will be disorganized. Why? Because unfortunately, this desire for material life never stops. You can, at the beginning, you need, for example, if you don't have a bicycle, you need a bicycle. Once you have a bicycle, you want a car. Once you have a car, you want a bigger car. Once a bigger car comes, you need different type of cars. The same thing goes with other material things. I want a small room, then it becomes a small house, then it becomes a bigger house, then it becomes a big material desire, and ego wishfulness for gaining of material is not going to end. And because it's not going to end, this notion of tashattut, that life becomes dysfunctional. You constantly work hard and hard and hard for something that you don't have, and you are not content with it. I've had occasions, people come to my office, lawyers and others, and say, Molana, I have everything, but I feel empty. When you sit with them, constantly from early childhood, they were told by their parents that the only thing that matters in life is the material, and to increase the material. So he became a lawyer. The first thing, nice office, nice car, too many cars, and everything else. Now he feels empty. I have these things, but what else? What goes after it? That contentment that they were searching for in the material is not there. This is why the hadith said, وَشَتَّتَ أَمْرًا. They become dysfunctional. They look at all this wealth, but they are not enjoying it. They constantly want something beyond it. وَلَمْ يَنَلْ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Ultimately, what are you going to get? Or even if you become a Rockefeller, what are you going to get? The amount of space that you sleep on it at night is the same whether you have a single room or the huge house. And the car that you drive or everything else is just limited to what you can eat, what you can enjoy. Beyond it, it's not for you. You leave them behind. وَمَنْ أَصْبَحَ وَالْآخِرَةُ أَكْبَرُهُ. And on the reverse, those people who wake up in the morning, not for the sake of material life, but for the sake of akhirah. That's the ultimate goal. Material life becomes only the mean or the way by which we can secure the hereafter. They are not the ultimate goal. They naturally, جعل جعل الله الغنى في قلبه, there is contentment. And وجمع له أمره, his life and his, is organized. So this concept, and there are other hadith that we have. For example, there is another hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullah wasalam alayhi that حب الدنيا رأس كل خطيئة. The love of material life is the root of all evils. So if حب الدنيا, and if I wake up and I have for the sake of dunya, that will be the ultimate end. It literally, what it says, that there are positive حب الدنيا and there are negative حب الدنيا. And we have to discern what are the characteristics of each. Before I do that, I need to kind of, in parentheses or sidestep a little bit. Our life, as I talked about a week ago, our life is full of struggles. There is no life. Usr and yusr, they go together. Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. So they go together. There is a struggle all the time. The struggle is part and parcel of human life. Innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan. The struggle towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is uphill struggle and full of challenges. So in daily life, even in material life, we struggle to go to work, we struggle to get along with other people, we struggle to have a job, we struggle to study, all of these are struggles. But spiritual struggles are totally different struggles. These are struggles that bring among the deepest of all struggles in human life, and they can shake us. Spiritual struggle can shake us to the core, raising fundamental question about who we are. We begin to ask, what is our values? What about moral principles? What about practices, direction in life, belief, and etc.? We go back to the three questions that Amir al-Mu'mineen left us with. من أين إلى أين وفي أين. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? What are my responsibilities and goals and mission in life? Am I a good person? What is haqq and what is batil? Etc., etc. These are part and parcel of the struggle for what we call the spiritual struggle. When the questions arise as to how do we define spiritual struggle, in most cases, spiritual struggle comes in when there is a connection to the divine. Material life is not spiritual struggle, but when we try to establish a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask the answer to all of these questions that I pose, but in the light of what Allah wants us to do, then it becomes a spiritual struggle. I'm now moving towards a sacred goal. That becomes a spiritual struggle. Is the tension experienced between attempt to mold ourselves and our life according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah's dictate. And we constantly ask ourselves, how close are we to this command? Month of Ramadan was part of that unique opportunity that we were supposed to constantly. Muraqabah means do the same thing. You watch yourself and you ask yourself how close I am or am I to these values that we have said. Part of the spiritual struggle is that it's not this worldly oriented. It's the other world, the hereafter oriented. If ultimately I'm supposed to depart from this world, ultimately, as there are a hadith that says the hereafter is the permanent abode, then naturally I have to ask myself, what have I done for the journey and for the hereafter? This is the core of what we call tazkiyah and moving towards Allah, which is part of this, the sayr and suluk and the adventure towards purification. Now, tazkiyah, as we have said in the past, is not going to happen without going through all of these painful experiences in our life. And naturally, as we are trying to move in and struggle towards purification, hubbud dunya, an attachment to the material life, has been identified as one of the strongest obstacle in this field. If once you attach yourself to this world, the idea of moving towards spirituality and towards Allah becomes impossible. Everything else, when the hadith says hubbud dunya ra'su kulla khati'ah, the root of all evils, the love of self, is part of this hubbud dunya. Ittiba' al-shahawat that Quran talks about is part of the attachment to world. Hubbul mal wal maqam is part of the attachment to the world. It's various things. So now, people, once we say that attachment to the world is so evil, a question comes, quite rightly, that we have a hadith that praises the world. So which one are we supposed to take? What is the balance? Under what circumstance hubbud dunya becomes negative and detestable, and under what circumstance it becomes positive? There is a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen, inna dunya daru sidqin liman sadaqaha wa daru afiyatin liman fahima anha wa daru ghinan liman tazawwada minha وَدَارُ مَوْعِظَةٍ لِمَنِ اتَّعَظَ بِهَا. These people اكتسبوا فيها الرحمة وربحوا فيها الجنة. Indeed, this world is the abode of truth for those who appreciate truthfulness. A place of safety for those who understand it. A treasure chest for those who collect provision from it, and a place of instruction for those who take lesson from it. These people earn Allah's mercy here and win the hereafter by the work that they do here. Then, and even Quran says, وَنِعْمَ دَارُ الْمُتَّقِينَ, that this world can become literally a heaven for those who are truly submitting to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is the secret that in this world can become positive, and under what circumstances it becomes negative? There are a number of ahadith in our literature that identifies the major difference, an outline. There is another hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alayhi that says the difference between positive approach to the world and negative approach to the world comes from this unique distinction. Sometimes, which the hadith early on alluded to, sometimes we use the world for the hereafter, and sometimes world becomes the mere goal. There is nothing about hereafter. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says they look at the world or look through the world. These are the distinctions. The muttaqeen, those people who submit to the command of Allah, they are aware that they have to struggle. At the end of the day, we have a hadith that says, ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah. A field that you plant, but you get your reward over there. So somehow we have to work and struggle and deal with this world. The distinction, the balance, in the same manner that we talked about khawf and raja, that khawf and raja, they have to be balanced in a way that none of them would lead to extreme of the other. One doesn't lead to depression, and the other one doesn't lead to becoming comfortable with the sin. The same thing is here. One, we use the world for attaining the hereafter. The other one, we use the world for the sake of the world. One, we use the world just simply to get richer and richer and richer and acquire more and more of wealth within the world. That's where the world becomes our objective. But if we use the world and everything, Islam doesn't want people to be poor. No, you have to struggle and become rich. But be aware of this wealth is given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be questioned on the day of judgment, in the hereafter. We gave you the wealth, we gave you health, we gave you position, we gave you all everything. What did you do with it? Just saved it in the bank? Remember, this is something I talked about in the past. Islam looks at the concept of possession of ownership and possession of the wealth in two manners. Number one, so long as you do not spend what Allah has commanded you to spend for the sake of the poor and the needy and the marginal within the society, you are simply a possessor of the wealth. You don't own it. The best proof for it, you leave it to somebody else and you go. The only time you become the owner of the wealth is when you have spent it for the sake of Allah and it's registered under your name on the day of judgment. Then when you go over there, say, yes, this is what he did. This is how he spent his wealth. And there is another hadith that says the most cursed individual is the one that spends all of his life struggling to earn money and wealth, but never spend it for the sake of Allah. This way he secures his punishment. Other people will come and use the wealth to secure their Jannah without even working for the money. So the difference between the positive approach to world and the negative approach to world is that the negative approach to world, we simply work hard for the sake of the money, and you look at this world. The other people, they look through it. And this notion that humans are never satisfied with material gain, there is a hadith from, again, another from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, مَثَلُ الدُّنْيَا كَمَثَلِ مَاءِ الْبَحْرِ. Salty water, extremely salty water. Just imagine yourself in a boat, lost in the middle of the sea. You feel thirsty. The only option in front of you is salty seawater. You know, كُلَّمَا شَرِبَ مِنْهُ الْعَطْشَانِ ازْدَادَ عَطَشًا. Because of the saltiness of the water, the more you drink from it, the thirstier you become. حَتَّى يَقْتُلُهُ. Until it kills you. Looking at the world, not as a mean for the hereafter, but for its sake, its own sake, you keep working hard and taking more and taking more. Before you know it, Israel comes and you have to leave everything and go. And the consequence, the questioning remains on them. So what we really need to do is to remind our young brothers and sisters here that as you start growing up, work hard for your future. Islam doesn't want you to sit down, a couch potato, and do nothing. No. Study, educate yourself, get rich, but be mindful of the fact that if you don't spend your money properly for the sake, at least portion of it for the poor and the needy, you have to leave it behind and you will be questioned on the day of judgment. How did you spend it? This amwal that we gave you, how did you earn it and how did you spend it? مثل الدنيا كمثل ماء البحر كلما شرب منه العطشان ازداد عطشا حتى يقتله. It ultimately will kill. Extreme attachment to the world leaves nothing but hasra, regret. There is a hadith again from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq that was telling one of his disciples, من كثر اشتباكه بالدنيا كان أشد لحسرته عند فراغه. There is another hadith similar to this from Abu Dar. Ya Abu Dar, لماذا نخاف الموت? Why is it that we are afraid of death? لأنكم أمرتم الدنيا وخربتم الآخرة. In the process of making a balance between here and the hereafter, you spend all your life building this one, Nothing about the hereafter. Now, the result of all your efforts, you have to leave it behind and go. This hadith said the same thing, that those who have extreme attachment to the material life, when it comes to the departure becomes extremely painful for them. As I lie on the bed, taking the last few breaths, I look at what I have worked my life. Now I have to leave it to somebody else and start answering questions from now on. Amal that comes with me, I haven't done much. In al-akhirah, Imam reminds this Sahabi, Daru qararan wa dunya daru zawalin wa fana. The permanent abode is the hereafter. This is only a transient life. But لكن أهل الدنيا أهل غفلة. Those who have attachment to this world, they become forgetful. Once you become forgetful of Allah, you become sinful. Once you become sinful, then beginning of going towards the negative part. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to really help us in whatever is left within 2 or 3 nights. And we have to struggle and really step back during these nights and reevaluate what we have done from the beginning of the month up to here, and reevaluate what I identified in our spiritual struggle, our core values, our moral principles, our lifestyle, and everything else, and see how close are we to Ummat al-Wasata that Quran talks about, how close are we to that, and being content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please keep praying and working hard during these nights. May Allah protect you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.